Traders, Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com, April the 3rd, 2022. In this edition of your weekend video newsletter, we'll discuss the indices, all of which bounced last week on Friday, closing positive on the week except for the NYSE and the Dow Industrials. This happened while international markets improved markedly, with leading stocks that we follow closing mixed, with the majority of our indicators bullish. We also saw the majority of sectors bullish as well, with some weakness in financials, industrials, tech, and transports. We also saw the XLY-XLP ratio remain bearish, which is a heads up for the bulls this week. We want to keep an eye on small caps as well, with 6 of 9 bullish, with tech, industrials, and discretionary weak. Do note there's an abundance of stocks that made 52-week highs last week, and many from the scans that are showing RSI improving on above average volume. Bulkowski is showing CPI signal 5 of 5 bullish, with his signal bullish at 73.5%, 9 bearish patterns, 25 bullish patterns, and 179 patterns waiting for breakout. S&P 500 support at 4,500, resistance at 4,600. Vol trigger moved up 100 points to 45.30 with 0 gamma above 45.39. Still, there is increased possibility for stability so long as the markets maintain prices above the volatility trigger, the level which counterparties would be more exposed to negative gamma and would hedge in a manner that is destabilizing, going into the first full week of bullish April seasonality. S&P 500 did pull back a bit on Wednesday and Thursday, managing a bounce on Friday that helped propel the indices back above the vol trigger at 45.30 and 0 gamma at 45.39. So long as we stay above those two levels, we should be fine. Looking for a retest of highs. If for some reason we fall back below the vol trigger at 45.30, there's a higher probability that we retest the 200 period moving average just below, which we thought would get a test on Friday. Instead, what happened was we had the JP Morgan collar rolling out to June, which resulted in counterparties having positive delta exposure via the short put spread and long call. Should the S&P 500 trade low enough and volatility rise, the hedging exposure may exacerbate realized volatility. So we've got to keep an eye on these levels this week and ultimately stay above the vol trigger at 45.30. The NASDAQ 100 also experienced some weakness, with Facebook pushing a bit higher, but Amazon, Apple, and Nvidia, along with Google, closed lower for the week, with Microsoft, Cisco, Tesla, Roku, and Berkshire Hathaway closing higher on the week. We'd like to see this bounce lead to a push back above the 200-day. Otherwise, we could come down and test the 50 and 200. RSI remains above 50, but we did see some selling volume on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, most likely due to end of the month selling. So it'll be very important to see what we do on Monday morning. Start with a little bit of caution and look for growth stocks to show strength or weakness and go with the trend thereafter. For now, it's more bullish to neutral, building higher highs and higher lows. We just need to get back above the 200-day to start the week, with resistance in this area as well on the weekly time frame. Small caps also managed a bounce last week. We're looking for a follow through here after testing the 382 Fibonacci on this weekly time frame from the pivots in March 2020 up to the highs that we came to in 2021, with 7 of 9 sectors bullish, while financials and industrials showed some weakness, along with tech. So if these 6 or 7 sectors bounce and follow through this week, look for small caps to continue. Some of the caveats we saw last week were breadth. We'd like to see following through again this week after a little fade on Friday. We'd also like to see the advanced decline moving higher and make some higher highs this week, with the New York Stock Exchange sitting on top of the 130-period moving average. That's half a year of data, 260 trading days per year. So any bounce and follow through to start the week, which would suggest that April seasonality is starting to kick into gear. From March into April, one of the seasonally strongest months next to July, with the New York Stock Exchange historically performing very well in these 2 months. Additional harbingers of better things to come was the improvement in the international indices, which you can see here. Most did move higher last week, with the Brazil index continuing to move higher. This is something we took as a trade back in early 2022 when it broke this downtrend, noted by, I believe, Yoda and EZ in the members trading room, with this Brazil ETF up nearly 40% since that January breakout. Finally, considering all of the hedging that came off with OPEX and the quarterly options roll, we'd expect to see VIX pick up a little bit of steam this week. So any move higher could impart some instability, especially if the S&P 500 dropped below that vol trigger at 45.30, as previously mentioned. However, if VIX starts to drop off early in the week, as traders seek less put protection, if that were to occur, we'd expect to see VIX VXV also moving lower, eventually making it down into the red zone, which would be calling a short-term top. If that were to apply sometime in the next couple of weeks. For now, we're cautiously optimistic, being neutral to bullish this week. Starting off the week, we have the bond stock ratio between the S&P 500 and the 10-year bond, neutral to bullish. If this were to turn back down this week, it's still bullish equities over bonds. We did, however, see a bit of buying down at the lows, TLT, along with some other assets we were looking at, like the investment grade corporate bond ETF, LQD. That did trigger a limit order late on Friday. And basically a starter position. I have 100 shares at this point. So if we follow through this week, what I'd be looking at is potentially an inverted head and shoulders pattern with a neckline up here near 125. So if LQD, TLT, and some of the other bond ETFs start to move higher, I might add to LQD if it gets above the 50-day in the near term as part of a newer position in my retirement account. For now, just waiting to see how price action starts this week relative to bond yields, which have been consolidating up here in the 2.3% range. Looking for this rally to lead to a consolidation, much like we saw back in the beginning of the year. Additional bond and yield assets like junk bonds, as an example, are a risk-on, risk-off indicator. If we see junk bonds starting to rise again, that would be bullish for equities. Going into the seasonally stronger month, April, as we look for bullish confirmation to start this week. As the 10-year potentially consolidates this week, would also like to see the same thing in the US dollar, managing to stay inside of this channel over the last 4 weeks, with any move higher in the US dollar most likely pressuring gold to the downside. Again, if the dollar consolidates, maybe we can see gold move one way or another. For now, gold is also consolidating for the last 3 weeks, along with silver. Copper by itself has been producing higher lows and higher highs. Last couple of weeks, though, we started to move sideways. So that's having a little bit of pressure on this economically sensitive indicator. Usually when copper is moving higher, that's bullish for the economy. Lower is bearish for the economy. Of course, that's been overshadowed by the strength we've seen in crude oil over the last 2 months since the invasion of Ukraine. Any move lower in Brent crude would signal potentially a relief to consumers, and perhaps consumer discretionary can get a bid along with retail if Brent does move a bit lower. Along with inflation, two big headwinds for the markets in the short term. Finally, we did see the CRB index after this bullish run since 2020 starting to show signs that maybe we'll start to see a reversal or a consolidation in this area as commodities back off from extreme levels. I would anticipate that that might be the case. So keep an eye on the CRB index as well, going into one of the seasonally strongest months of the year for equities. The sector heat map updated for last Friday, showing sectors are mostly bullish, along with international indices going into this week, with the exception of Russia, of course. This leads us to favor some sectors over others, like IBB. Biotechs look strong, looking for a follow-through. RSI is rising, magnesium above its signal line, and volume has been increasing. Prices above the 9 and 21 day. Real estate also strong for the same reasons, considered an inflation hedge, looking for a follow-through and a breakout. Transports took a hit last week, so we'll probably avoid this unless we see a bounce and buyers come in at the 50-day. Material sector is consolidating for the last week, looking for a bounce or a push back down towards the 21-day. We'd be bullish above 89 and bearish below 86. Communications, we'd like to see stocks like Roku, Netflix, Facebook, Charter Communications, Discovery, Fox, all the broadcasting related names. If those start to move higher, we'll probably push off the 50-day. We'd also look for those individual names to follow through. Energy continues this consolidation. Looks like we could see more of the same. While the big banks have been getting downgrades over the last couple of weeks, looking for this to fade a bit more, along with the 10-year yield. If that consolidates, financials are out of favor at the present time. Industrials backed off a couple of days as well, along with tech stocks and growth. Again, we're looking for a bounce here and a push back above the Tuesday highs last week. Consumer staples, defensive sector, that's testing 52-week highs most likely. Watch Walmart, that also looks good in this group. Utilities, if you look at the opening monologue, a lot of these names are related to utilities and energy that made fresh 52-week highs last week, giving utilities a potential for follow-through. Note the volume, that's institutions, RSI is showing muscle, along with strength that we saw in healthcare, a little bit behind what we saw in utilities, but this looks pretty strong too, above average volume on Friday. Look for healthcare, biotechs, pharmaceuticals to continue in the bullish trend. And again, if we start to see crude oil backing off and maybe inflation backing off a little bit, we could see consumer discretionary pushing a bit higher, along with a bounce and a higher low in retail. Finally, the one thing that is giving us a caveat, reason to pause, is the XLY-XLP ratio. When consumer staples is outperforming, as we saw, and consumer discretionary is not performing as well, this is an indication that institutions are positioning more bearishly. And if this continues to move lower, like it did back in late 2018 when the Fed raised rates 4 times, or back in 2007 when it really started to accelerate lower, keep an eye on the markets here. If this ratio turns down, that would be bearish overall. The IBD 50 for this week showing a preponderance of stocks showing relative strength. Looking for a follow-through. About 2/3 are bullish. About 1/3 is bearish, with 26 stocks set up nicely, looking for a follow-through, like Amphastar Pharmaceuticals, showing a nice bullish pattern, consolidated for about 3 weeks in a fairly tight pattern. 3 weeks tight patterns tend to break higher. We're looking for muscle to continue. Pharmaceuticals and healthcare were strong along with biotechs last week. No reason to believe that AMPH can't follow through. MACD is trying to get back above its signal line, and stochastics is embedded. Arista Networks also consolidating for the last week and a half. Cup and handle potentially. A break above 142, 143 would signal a test of recent highs. RSI is above 50, so that's a plus. Volume looks good. MACD is above its signal line, and stochastics is embedded. ARES, Aries Management, from previous watch lists, looks like it's going to get above these pivots, similar to what we saw with Walmart, when Walmart broke above its pivots that it established over the last several months. Walmart followed through and continued higher. Many of you trading this one last week, that was a nice follow through. Now that we're breaking out, Walmart looks good on the weekly time frame as well, with a 20-point measured move, giving us a target between 170 and 180, the latter being a 20% breakout or 30 points. If you aspire to IBD methodology, look for a 20% gain before starting to look for profit taking. Walmart, with its momentum clearly starting to improve, something we'll look forward to going into the summer months. Liking Blackstone as well, looking for a push above these levels. We're holding the 9 and 21 day, look for a push above 132.50, 132.70, signaling a potential test of 138 if that were to occur, and then 52-week highs if it does follow through. MACD is above its signal line, and stochastics is embedded. If the semiconductor industry group starts to see any kind of strength this week, I know many of you are thinking bearish. If that does happen and we start to see the semiconductors moving higher, look for ABGO, one of our favorites, to bounce off of the 9 EMA. Need to see bullish action on Monday or Tuesday to give us an indication that we might be following through on this bullish trend development. Callon Petroleum, a little choppy, but showing some indication that maybe this strength we saw on Friday might push us to a newer high. Car Gurus in this big triangle pattern, looking for a breakout of that triangle or a breakdown for direction. RSI is above 50. We're moving into an area where there's very little volume has traded over here on the left. So we can see potentially a test of 52-week highs. Watch for Car Gurus and other names in the industry group to move simultaneously higher. That's a higher level of confirmation if that were to occur. Carlyle Group, looking for a follow-through. It's bullish along its 9 and 21 day moving average. 50 days turned up. RSI is above 50. If we move above these areas here, there's no volume at this level that's traded here before, so looking for a follow-through and a breakout if we see strength this week in Carlyle Group. The steel industry most likely gets some sort of follow-through or resolution, consolidating at 52-week highs. Watch for U.S. Steel, Nucor, and Steel Dynamics to give us confirmation if Cleveland Cliffs does break out this week. Costamare still consolidating, but there's a lot of stocks in the maritime shipping that look strong, like Scorpio Tankers, which continues to move higher. Eagle Bulk following through as well. Cross Country Healthcare looking for a follow through as well. The healthcare stocks have been strong. Looking for a follow through in biotechs and pharmaceuticals to confirm. Darling Ingredients, bullish, 921.50, about to cross through the 200 day. RSI above 50. Datadog might push off the 9 and 21 day this week. Keep an eye on this one. RSI is above 50. Enphase Energy and some of the solar stocks continuing higher. We have a position in Enphase added to it on Thursday, targeting 52-week highs over the next several weeks. Extra Space Storage and many of the stocks in the group like Core Real Estate being seen as inflation protection, looking for EXR to continue higher. MACD's above its signal line, stochastics trying to turn back up. FSK, KKR Capital, breaking out the 52-week highs, looking for a follow-through, looking for volume, which shows institutions have been picking up shares. MACD's above its signal line, looking for that volume to continue. Another maritime shipping container related name, Global Ship Lease, looking for a breakout, showing relative strength. Harmony Biosciences, maybe a follow-through here as well. Biotechs, pharma, and healthcare were strong last week. Inspire Medical Systems, again healthcare, looking for the follow-through. trading in an area where there's lack of supply. Kinsale Capital, from previous observations, this one looks like it's ready to break out of this cup and handle pattern and check 52-week highs. Matador Resources, Energy, looking for a follow through and a breakout with obvious institutional buying on Friday. Also looking for some of the growth names like Microsoft to follow through. We got buyers that stepped up on Friday at the low of the day, closed near the highs of the day in the upper half of the daily range. Looking for Microsoft to test the highs if growth does find a bid on Monday. MDB, I noticed this has some mention in the trading room on Friday, I believe. Looking for a follow through here as well. Volume shows institutions have been picking up shares. New Fortress Energy, while I'm not interested in this particular name, other names in the industry group that are showing relative strength most likely follows suit with New Fortress. Look for a follow through this week. Volume was above average on Friday and elevated on Wednesday and Thursday as well. MACD's above its signal line, leaving NFE at extremes. Probably comes back a little bit, most likely consolidates and follows through in a bullish direction over the next several weeks. Pacira Biosciences, PCRX, nice trend, just continues with strength in healthcare, biotech, and pharmaceuticals. We'll look for PCRX to follow through. Prologis, looking for the follow through here as well. PLD, RSI is above 50. Price action looks like it's going to test this high. Volume starting to pick up. MACD's above the signal line and stochastics is embedded. PSA, public storage, along with extra space storage, both of those very bullish, look very similar. This industry group has inflation protection. Real estate has done well. REITs are looking good. Look at your favorites. These two look good, PSA and EXR. Regeneron's been very bullish over the last few weeks, looking for a follow through. One of those names that Frank had posted in the trading room, some gene editing business development deals that might be interesting to look at, along with some additional names like AbbVie that we're trading. Looking for Merck to follow through as well, Regeneron, Novartis. A lot of these names worth a look. So make sure to thank Dr. Frank for that post. Additional real estate names like Rexford Industrial Realty. Nice right side of a cup building. This one looks certainly that is going to test these highs. Overhead, RSI's showing strength of trend as well as MACD above its signal line and rising. Volume picking up on REXR. Tesla flagging, looking for a follow through and a breakout above these 52-week highs, with my target at 1208 yet to be tested. With volume picking up, showing institutions were the buyers over the last several weeks. Finally, we got Vertex Pharmaceuticals, nice trend. Other stocks in this group, Merck, for example, looking very strong. Winter Bananas has a position here in the trading room, along with persistent strength in Bristol Myers Squibb. And Eli Lilly, another one I think Frank is in, looking for a breakout. Looks good on the weekly time frame as well, with a measured move, depth of pattern around 60 points, or around 340 to 350 in the weeks to come. With momentum starting to improve again, look for Lilly to continue higher, along with this industry group. Okay, traders, that's going to do it for me. This is Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com with your weekend video newsletter. Make sure you check out the names that are in the opening monologue as well. Many of them look very strong. Looking for a follow-through. Funds are buying stocks at new highs, with stocks that are showing RSI improving on above average volume. Also something to consider this week. Walmart at the end of the list going into this week. I'll send out a watch list later tonight around 11:30 p.m., 12 midnight on the East Coast, around 8:30, 9 o'clock on the West Coast. So be sure to check your inbox for that. Otherwise, have a great weekend, what's left of it, and we'll talk to you in the morning. Take care.